Good afternoon and welcome to a Tuesday edition of the PHLY Eagles Show. I'm Zach Berman. That's Fran Duffy, the All-City NFL Draft expert. We're brought to you by TrueMark Financial Credit Union. And even though we are still, we're still in the aftermath, the afterglow of the draft, it's still ripe to discuss. And Fran, who literally was probably seeing prospects in his sleep, finally had a chance to sleep. Fran, this is the audience's first time seeing you since Saturday night. Good to see you on here.
It's great to see you as well. I know you've been well traveled the last couple of days, but yeah, it's been a crazy couple of days since the draft ended. Everyone's like, "Oh, look, draft's over. Like now it's time to relax." I had to, you write up all the grades on everybody. I had to watch some film on some players that got drafted in some of the other all-city markets that I hadn't done yet. Got grades done for all the 5 teams and all the 5 markets. And then now I'm going to start watching undrafted free agents across all the 5 markets. So we're still churning along with the draft content, at least for the next few days.
Yeah, you mentioned the undrafted free agents. I see in the chat people want a Holland Pierce discussion. I promise you, we are getting to the undrafted free agents Thursday. Fran and I will be together then, and we're going to be breaking down the list of reported and the free agents, the undrafted free agents that we know about. That's not today, though. What today is, we're going to look at the 10 draft picks. There are more than enough to discuss. And look, we had 16 hours of live programming over the weekend, plus additional videos on demand where we broke down every pick, broke down the class overall, the days overall. So we're not going to do player by player here. What we're going to do is superlatives. So it's like, when you're in your senior year, it's coming down to an end and the yearbook comes out and it's the most likely to be the PHLY producer, Julia Hoff, right? The superlatives today are going to be, we have a list of categories from this draft, and we will be breaking those down. I do want to say, though, if you go to allphly.com right now, you can read Fran's entire pick-by-pick breakdown. I thought it was a creative way to explain the grades as opposed to A, B, C, D, like how they fit kind of within the value. I have 10 thoughts on this draft class that you can find on allphly.com, and we're going to continue to have ongoing coverage, especially here as the Eagles transition to rookie minicamp and then OTAs. So let's get started here with the obvious one, and that is Fran Duffy's favorite pick.
Yeah, I think for me, it has to start at the top, and that's with Alabama linebacker Jihaad Campbell. This was a guy that was ranked just outside my top 20. Obviously, the Eagles get him at 31 overall with a short trade up with the Kansas City Chiefs. You don't make a trade up like that unless another team is in talks to move into that slot. So the Eagles making sure that they can secure the rights to the versatile linebacker. And that versatility is going to be big. I know that, there's a lot of thought of what his role going to be in this Vic Fangio defense. Is he going to be primarily an off-ball backer? Is he going to line up off the edge and rush the quarterback? I tend to think that we're going to get plenty of him rushing off the edge as well. But my gut tells me it sounds like he's going to be a linebacker first and then edge rush second. I'm fascinated to see how that plays out over the course of not just the spring, but as we get into the summer and then certainly the fall.
So the linebacker first, edge rusher second, is that based on the Eagles depth chart where, it's the quickest way to get on the field? Is it based on his skill set or, because I do think based on the way Howie Roseman was describing it the other night and really his emphasis on the fact that their position priorities have not changed, right? Yeah. And he, more than anything, emphasized the edge rushing component of it. Like, is that just a feature of what he does, or is that going to be a prominent part of what he does?
We'll see if it develops into the prominent part of what he does. Just my understanding from conversations I've had in the last few days is that it's going to be linebacker first, and then we'll see what happens from there. So I'm fascinated to see how this plays out. How quickly does a transition like that happen, right? I mean, we saw that with Micah Parsons down in Dallas. Not that Campbell is the athlete that Parsons is, but when he first got there, he was an off-ball backer that, hey, on third down, on pass situations, we're going to put down onto the line of scrimmage and let him, cut him loose against the quarterback. And then it was year 2 when it became a full-time thing. how quickly would a transition like that happen? Is a transition like that going to happen? That's something that certainly will be fun to track.
So then let's go to the other end of this year, which is your least favorite pick. And you can take this however direction you want.
Yeah, I struggled with it. And I think at the end of the day, it's going to be Andrew Mukuba. And it was tough
Okay.
because I liked the player. Like I do like Andrew Mukuba. When we announced the pick, when you broke the pick on the draft show on Friday night, I was like, yeah, like, all right, like Andrew Mukuba, I'm excited about this. But just kind of sitting back and thinking about, I'm like, all right, like this where I had him graded personally, he was in the bottom end of a cluster of 5 or 6 safeties. When you look at the Jonas Sankers and the Kevin Winstons and the Xavier Watts from Notre Dame, like you got a cluster of 4, 5, 6 safeties, in that grouping after the top 2 of Malachi Starks and Nick Manwari. The Eagles, obviously, you target Andrew Mukuba. So you feel convicted in your evaluation from that standpoint. I'm sure he got the stamp of approval from Vic Fangio. I'm excited to hear from Vic Fangio and from the coaching staff in the coming weeks and months on these rookies. But you target this player specifically because you know how he fits in your scheme. And honestly, when I'm looking at this cluster, like I get how they landed there. So I see the fit. I don't hate the pick, but of the group, I would say it's probably my least favorite from the 10 selections.
Yeah, one thing we spoke about over the weekend was his size or lack thereof, and the history of sub 190-pound safeties is not especially well, I was about to say especially fruitful, but there's not a large sample size of it either. Now there are reports that he's added weight, added muscle since the combine. Would that change the way you view him, or is this more based on the play evaluation?
More on the play evaluation, obviously, like, the weight is the weight, and that was a thing. I mean, he has missed plenty of tackles over the course of his time in college, and some of that will be him falling off contact, but it's more about him just being a little bit overzealous, coming down. He'll take pretty good angles to the ball, but he just comes in a little bit hot, similar to Sidney Brown in that way, where Sidney just comes in, he's a little bit out of control. You see a little bit of that with Mukuba, but I think that the size does play a little bit of a factor there. But I would just say overall, because it's like this, right? When you're comparing clusters of players that way, like I liked Xavier Watts' ball skills more than I liked Mukuba's ball skills, but I liked Mukuba's toughness a little bit more. Kevin Winston had Mukuba's toughness, was bigger, but was not as athletic, not as rangy, right? And so there's a lot of like, all right, can we find like that Venn diagram where who's the guy that has the most of those top end qualities, those critical factors at the position? I felt that Jonas Sanker was the most well-rounded, where maybe it wasn't like A trait anywhere, but everything was B plus. To me, like at safety, that's something that I value, is that consistency. So that's why I always kind of had him grade as he would always grade out the best for me. But again, I don't argue with how they got there. It's just not my personal favorite in terms of how I stack it.
Yeah, it's interesting. We discussed the first and second round picks here because we haven't spoken on the show since before Howie Roseman's press conference on Saturday night. I thought Howie gave an interesting answer at the end. I asked him what he was hoping to accomplish from this class. Right, there's sometimes a big picture takeaway, and it's not that he answered the question specifically, but he kind of gave philosophy in terms of how they view their picks, which I think is instructive for how we should evaluate them and kind of the process that went into this. So we said the first round, what they're looking for is a blue chip player, like a Pro Bowl player. That's your best chance of landing that type of player is in the first round. Okay. He said the second round, what they want is a good starter, someone who could be a good starter and make a difference. Okay. So we need to view the career of Mukuba within that context, because all of this should be graded on a curve. You're not judging Jihaad Campbell the same way you're judging, Cameron Williams, right? It's a different type.
Sure.
You're not judging Andrew Mukuba the way you're judging McWilliams in the secondary. It's a different type of investment. So that's why I think the framing here is especially important. The third round pick, which the Eagles didn't have this year, but he says you're trying to get a minimum of solid starters, and same really for the fourth round and in the middle rounds. And he says what he tells his scouting staff is on day 3. I thought this was interesting. Shoot for starters. Okay. and this is different than some other teams do it. Some other teams are trying to find specific roles. Like,
Yep.
all right, can this guy do X? Plug him into X. Howie says his view is they can find backups or these role players in August. They can find them on other spots of the roster. What they're looking for during day 3 of the draft is they're gambling on traits. He says players who have traits who they think can make a difference, and he's not so worried about the hit rate of them. Like, he's not trying to say 9 out of 10 players made the roster. What he's trying to think of is if 3 of these guys can become starters, that's a really good outcome. So as we go through this exercise, I think that's a good way for viewers and listeners to think about this. And I should also say to the viewers and the listeners live in the chat, answer these questions with us. Put it in the chat, and then as you watch it back or you listen back, put it in the YouTube comments, your answers. Put it in the Apple podcast comments, the Spotify comments. I will check them all out. I promise you that. So let's go on to the next one here, which is best value.
Yeah, and this one was an interesting one just because obviously there's some context required, right? And I think for me, I landed with Cameron Williams, the tackle from Texas, just because, look, I know that no one was expecting him to go round 1 the way that he was being talked about, late in the fall. I would say, even my understanding going in was that we're probably talking early day 3 at best. He sneaks into the back end of the top 100. He goes late in the 3rd round. But the way I anticipated coming into the week that he was going to be a 4th or 5th round choice, to get him in the 6th round, I think was fine value for a player with plus traits. And as I said on the show on Saturday, Cameron Williams was a player that, as these too early mock drafts are coming out, I know our friend Dane Brugler already posted his at The Athletic. I'm sure I'll be doing one here in the coming weeks after I'm done all the UDFA reports. But when you do those too early mock drafts, if Cameron Williams had gone back to Texas for another season, my gut tells me that he would have been in a lot of these too early mock drafts. Hey, you know what? This is a guy that started off well. He was only a 1-year starter. Things kind of fell apart down the end. There was a lot of penalties. If he can clean that up, he's going to be in the 1st round mix in 2027 or 2026 rather. And so I think, look, the Eagles, they take a big swing here with a talented player, a big tackle who's only got 1 year starting experience, a lot of things to clean up. I thought this was good value for the Eagles at the end of the day.
I agree with you there. I was in the camp that in pre-combine, I had him as a day 2 pick for the Eagles. Obviously, that wasn't the valuation as draft approached. But for 6th round, I like the pick. Let me ask you, because I know this is something we discussed. I can see him bouncing inside the guard just based on what Jeff Stoutland has looked for in that spot. You obviously see what they did with Brandon Brooks. You saw what they did with Mekhi Becton. Am I being ambitious there, or do you think guard could be part of his profile?
I think it's definitely possible. It would not shock me if we get out there the first time and we watch them practice and Cameron Williams is out there working inside. I do think at the end of the day, when you're dealing with a 6th round pick, and especially any kind of developmental player, you typically want to say, like, all right, where does he feel most comfortable right now? If he's just trying to get up to speed, don't put him in a new position where he's got to get like doubly up to speed, right? Like, all right, if he feels comfortable at tackle, let's put him at tackle right now. Let him catch up to at least like a baseline, and then we could try and move him that way. Some people feel differently about that and say, like, all right, well, if he's going to be swimming, let's have him swim at the position that we fully anticipate him competing at by the time we get into training camp. So I think that will be interesting. My gut tells me it'll be tackle, but I think it could go the other way as well.
And then the other thing about him that I found interesting is we're not typically seeing the early entry who slides too far down, because players are incentivized to return to college now based on NIL and not even NIL, just based on the fact that they can get paid by the school, right? And typically linemen are getting paid decently at some of these big schools. So are you surprised that he came out?
Oh yeah, I was very surprised. I honestly, so I did a couple games. I want to say it was like October, early November, and I see the pluses, I see the minuses. I gave him a kind of like a developmental grade, for a potential good starter down the road. So, that's not to get into the nitty gritty. That's like kind of like middle of the road on my board. And I was like, all right, like when I watch him again, it could go the other way. It could go either way. Obviously he declared, or as I'm watching, the college football playoff play out, I see the SEC championship game. I'm like, yeah, like this guy really struggled in this game. My gut tells me he's going to go back to school. So when he declared, I was pretty surprised, especially given the fact that we had all this talent at the top of this tackle draft. Clearly he thought he would be a part of that, at least that second wave, where the Ariante Urseries went, middle of the second round. He fell significantly further than those guys. So but my guess is he would probably regret that decision, but obviously, we'll see how that plays out.
Yeah, and the shame in that too is he would have been blocking for Arch Manning, potential number one pick. If Arch Manning comes out, Texas is going to be as prominent of a team as there is in the country next year. So you're right. I mean, if he had good film next year, he would have been in that mix. And that's why I agree, real strong value for the Eagles. And so the opposite side of that is, what's the worst value, or where do you think they might have reached on a player?
Yeah, this one's tough, especially because Campbell we establish is good value, right? And then when you get into day 3, like to say a guy's bad value once we get, and they had eight of their 10 picks were on day 3, so I just kind of landed on Mukuba by default. Just because this is a guy that I ranked like inside my top 100, but not closer to 100 than 64. I forget what the final number is. It's in my draft grades. They're up now on allphly.com. But I think when you're looking at Mukuba, that was a little bit earlier than where I thought. It was a little bit earlier than where Daniel Jeremiah had him in his top 100, a little bit earlier than where Dave Brugler had him in his top 100. So I would say that he was probably the one where they felt the strongest about his evaluation and his projection moving forward.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And that's where I fell on this too. Like, I mean, clearly if you're watching now, I imagine you've watched our show quite a bit the past few weeks and on draft weekend. And I liked Mukuba leading into the draft. I did not think he was the third best safety in the draft. And when I say that, because I'm thinking not just like solid starter now, I'm thinking of the upside component of it. And I thought Kevin Winston's upside, just based on the frame, based on the way he played 2 years ago in particular, that I like Kevin Winston more than Mukuba. I frankly thought Mukuba was going to be more in that like 7th, 8th safety taking, and I liked him there. So the fact that he was the third safety taken, didn't love that value. But again, and I've echoed this point, and I'm probably like a broken record here. Where the Eagles were drafted, it was where the Eagles were drafting was this odd spot where it was clearly a player that they liked. You're too far down for that top 30 player to fall to you, right? If they were able to trade up, that would have been ideal. But 64, you're not the board wasn't that great there, and I don't know what their trade opportunities were. Howie said they were looking at trading back there. I don't know what was materializing. It was clearly a player that they targeted, but yeah, I don't think that was like there's some picks, like we might get to it. Smile Mondin, and I saw Al Calby's comments on PhiladelphiaEagles.com. Al Calby, the assistant GM, said like they were surprised Smile Mondin was on the board, right? And so there's some picks where like you're looking at your draft board and you're like, how is that guy still there? I don't know if Andrew Mukuba was like that, right? Andrew Mukuba was probably one of those where they had the player targeted, and they're like, all right, we don't want to miss out on him. Let's take him here. But it's not like he was this glaring exception on their board.
Yeah, and we'll talk in a different superlative later about how the different realities of how this could have played out. But when you were on the board in that situation, from what I understand, the conversation becomes like, who would we be sick about if we missed out on this player, right? And so I think with Mukuba, clearly, like you feel that convicted on it. That means that there's somebody in that building, somebody in that draft room, like stood on the table, not necessarily on Friday night, but in the lead up to it was like, no, like this is a guy that we need to have priority on.
So if you want to know who the scouting staff or the coaching staff or the analytics staff might have been standing on the table for, keep tuning in right after this break. Let me tell you about Empire Today, because a big part of our conversation today is about floors, right? Now ceilings and floors. And by the way, we're getting to a point now where I'm going to need a different reference point, a different reference point to floors. But the great thing is that you want a strong floor in a draft pick and in a home. And so just like the Eagles need a strong floor on their players, you need a home floor advantage, and Empire Today can help you get it. Empire Today has flooring experts, they have dedicated flooring professionals who focus on flooring every single day. We've all been in these big box stores and you wander aimlessly, if you're like me, around aisle to aisle, and this paralysis by analysis, and you're hauling all these materials home, and then you're looking for an installer because, trust me, like I can't install this by myself. And you're coordinating everything. And the big box stores, they have a flooring department, but the person who's helping me pick out the floors, that person I was talking about sinks last week. And next week when I go in, probably not about light bulbs, but maybe like lighting fixtures, they might be helping me with that. So that's the great thing about Empire Today is they specialize in floors. That's your best bet for new floors. They have flooring experts that bring the showroom right to you. Pick the right flooring and the right colors for your space. See how it looks with your furniture in your house. It's convenient. When I care about efficiency, I care about convenience. You get precise measurements taken and you have all your questions answered, so there are no surprises. With Empire Today, you get clear upfront pricing, all-inclusive pricing, and you can schedule installation as soon as the next day. Schedule a free in-home estimate today because some things are just better at home. PHLY listeners can receive a $350 discount when using promo code PHLY. Yes, you heard that right. A $350 discount with code PHLY. Restrictions apply. Visit Empire Today/PHLY for full details.
We'll now hear from our friends over at Bet365 because we know, whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. Bet365 has 90 million users worldwide. They live stream over 780,000 events each and every year, and you've got those early payout offers across the NBA and NHL. We're in the postseason now, NBA playoffs, hockey playoffs. There's nothing better than any NHL playoffs. We are in the thick of things right now. And remember, Bet365, when you're watching those live in-game bets and you're watching those games, it was Bet365 that pioneered the live in-game betting. They offer the widest range of games and markets available for all of that live in-game betting across 78 sports. And now new customers, you can get in $150 in bonus bets when you bet just $5. Win or lose, you sign up for a new account over at Bet365. Use the code PHLY365. You deposit $10, place a bet for $5, and you get $150 back in bonus bets, win or lose. So even if you lose the bet, doesn't matter. You still get $150 free in bonus bets. And you've got, again, NBA playoffs, NHL playoffs. It's Tuesday, which means that it is NBA tip-off Tuesday. That's exclusive from Bet365. You place that qualifying parlay bet totaling $20 or more on tonight's NBA games, and you get up to $25 in bonus bets. Terms and conditions apply because, again, remember, whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. And we got the breaking news from Bet365 as well to close this out. New customers now, again, you get $150 in bonus bets when you bet $5, win or lose. Sign up, use the code PHLY365. You deposit 10, place a bet for 5, you get 150. Doesn't get any better than that. Bonus bets can be used on the spread, totals, player props, futures, and more. Whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. Must be 21 or older and physically located in PA. If you or someone you know has a gambling problem and wants help, call 1-800-GAMBLER.
Welcome back here to the PHLY Eagles Show. Typically, we would go to some super chats here. You guys haven't paid for these chats today. Please, let's put that in there. But you know what? We're appreciative of the live audience. Cousin Grace is in here often, and Cousin Grace asks the question here that I will answer regardless. And she says, this was at 2:06. Can someone please ask ZB what the deal was when Howie said he was going to drink whatever brand mezcal after the presser and directly at ZB when I said it? Cousin Grace, I will answer that question for you. Howie Roseman is an investor and owner in a mezcal company called Fosforo. So Howie was going to have a celebratory drink after the draft, and he used the press conference as a way to, give some pub to his mezcal company. So I have had Fosforo. I have had Fosforo mezcal for reporting purposes. That is, I got to tell you, like I'm not a mezcal expert. It was good. I liked it. But there's a lot of things where I would say, or there's some things where I would say, like I'm pounding the table take my word on this. I have conviction in it. Mezcal is not my specialty, but yeah, Howie Roseman has a mezcal company called Fosforo. Jim Cramer from Mad Money is a partner of his. So little background there as far as why Howie brought that up. Speaking about Howie and his staff, Howie oversees everything: the scouting staff, the analytics staff. He doesn't oversee the coaching staff, but no one's being drafted without Howie, putting his finger on the button. So these next three categories, I'm curious. Everyone has different favorites, right? And so I'm asking you to speculate here. First off, who do you think is the scouting staff's favorite pick? The one who, when the scouts are having a drink, whether it's mezcal or Pabst Light, after the draft, they are discussing this player.
Yeah, I went back and forth with this one, and it's funny you mentioned the article on PhiladelphiaEagles.com with assistant GM ALLCITY. I didn't read through that yet because I was going to just incorporate that into my whole. I do the thing where I take in all the teams post draft coverage. I was just going to loop that in, with that day, that few hours that I spend on the Eagles. But I actually picked Smile Munden, the linebacker from Georgia. I think when you're looking at Munden, he's got that combination of he's got starting experience, he's got versatility, he's got trades, he can chip in on special teams, he can do a lot of different things on defense. There were a number of players that I thought about in this area, but Munden was the guy that I landed on. It's I could see him being the more resounding scout favorite, everybody in the room kind of getting on board, especially at that point in the draft.
Yeah, and I thought with Munden too, it was now if Jihaad Campbell was playing the edge more, it's obviously a need, but typically you're not probably looking at taking two off-ball linebackers. Right. But I do think the value there jumps off. Your comp was right on in terms of Oren Burks, because that's the role they're going to need here, is a special teams contributor who can step in on defense. And if there's an injury, it wouldn't surprise me if Smile Munden pushes past Jeremiah Trotter Jr. on the depth chart at some point here. But certainly, at least going into the season, he's someone who is going to have a day one special teams role for the Eagles just because of his play style, his athleticism. And then, if he can develop as a weak side linebacker, that's obviously going to be beneficial there.
Day one training camp, who's running with Zach Bond with the ones? Is it going to be Jihaad Campbell, the rookie, or is it going to be Jeremiah Trotter Jr., the incumbent?
Yeah, good question. I'm guessing Jihaad Campbell, the rookie.
Yeah.
Yeah, what do you think?
That'd be my guess too. That would be my guess. I mean, we saw last year, obviously they slow played it with Quinyon Mitchell, and we saw him kind of bounce inside outside. But my gut would say that Jihaad Campbell would have the leg up there. But yeah, that will be something fun to watch.
That will be fun to watch. So then let's go to the next one here, and that's the coaching staff's favorite. And because the coaching staff is often looking for something different than the scouting staff might be looking for. The terms that I always use, the way I always frame it, is that long term to the coaching staff is this Sunday's game, right? So if you're an assistant coach or you're a coordinator, you're not so focused on what this guy's going to be like 3 years from now. The coordinator or the position coaches might not be planning on coaching this guy 3 years from now, right? They're hoping to be a coordinator somewhere else in a year. So what they're looking for is someone who, if they need a solution this week, this guy can help them. So who do you think is the coaching staff's favorite player here?
Yeah, here I landed with Ty Robinson, the defensive tackle from Nebraska. I just think this is a guy that can play from multiple techniques and win. He can affect the quarterback. He can affect the run game. He's everything you hear about him is A+ off the field. Very workmanlike player on the field. Just again, just consistency. I think that stood out well watching him. So for me, I could see, especially the fact that they spent that first pick on day 3 on Ty Robinson. I could see that being a situation where it's all right, you finish up with day 2. Howie and Nick speak to the media, press conference. They go back upstairs. They have their final meetings and conversations. And just before everyone turns the lights out, Vic Fangio, Clint Hurt, they kind of grab Howie before they leave and hey, tomorrow, Ty Robinson. We need somebody to come in and take some of these snaps and be a part of this rotation. This is the guy that we want to make sure we target.
You hit it on the head, Fran. And I think that's precisely what happened. A little background here. to Howie said that he was in discussion for their 3rd round pick before they traded back. So that was 96,
Okay.
right? Then they trade back again. And he said they had opportunities at the top of the 4th round there to trade back, and they weren't going to do it because they didn't want to lose the chance to draft him, right? And so, look, it's an easy thing to say, and they did trade back twice in the 3rd round, but I don't think they were. I do think this is a player, like you said, that they targeted for that very reason. He checks a lot of boxes, but you look at it from a coaching staff's perspective, one thing that coaches really value is versatility, right? Is someone who can play multiple spots. So if you're Clint Hurt, and I heard the phone call with Clint Hurt, and you need some, if player X goes down in the middle of a game, can Ty Robinson do that? The answer is probably yes, because Ty Robinson can play multiple spots along the line. When you see him, and I saw him at the combine, he's big. Like he's a strong, he's strong. He's broad. There are some of these guys where you're like, I wonder what he looks like when he fills out. You're not having that conversation with Ty Robinson. Ty Robinson is filled out. And then the athleticism is also there, but this also stood out to me is Anthony Gargano, and make sure you're checking out Anthony's show every day, Monday to Friday, 9 to 11. He gave the anecdote that, as you know, Anthony knows Matt Rule well. Matt Rule wanted to come on his show right away and talk about Ty Robinson. Like, this guy is a coach's favorite. And I would expect that he's not just someone who is going to be on the 53-man roster. He's going to be active on game days because of that versatility.
Yeah, I think that with that skill set, I would agree that he's going to be in line to be a key part of the rotation sooner rather than later.
So let's go to the next one here, and this one's interesting too because it's the analytics staff's favorite, and this can sometimes be different than the scouting staff, sometimes different than the coaching staff. Not to say that the analytics staffers aren't watching film. Because they are, they're not just like looking at the numbers, but what they're often doing is looking at data points, and like you're making the analytics staff is making their bets based on, all right, what's the precedent for players who have, this profile or that profile. So who do you think is the analytics staff favorite?
Yeah, if you are someone that watched and listened to Bo and I do the draft show over the course of this offseason, we did several episodes where it was, all right, what are the profiles that are worrisome? What are the profiles that have a positive light? And it was a lot harder in this draft to find like, oh, this is a really sound profile where it's young, productive, athletic, like you just kind of check all the boxes. And certainly when you get to this point in the draft, they can be hard to find. Like, one of the reasons why I loved the Moro Jumma pick a couple of years ago was that this was a young player who tested extremely well, where all the efficiency metrics were outstanding on a per snap basis. He was productive. I was like, man, like, all right, check, right? You feel really, really good. When I'm looking at Antoine Powell-Ryland, the pass rusher for Virginia Tech, not everything is super clean, but there's enough here that I think that you can be excited about. And there are models that would point to say like, all right, like, yeah, there's a lot of reasons to get excited about this player, especially when you get into the 6th round of the draft. And so for me, the one knock is he's got really short arms, 31.25-inch arms at the combine, just over 6'2.5". So he's shorter and he's squattier. That's a little bit concerning. Athletically, it was a solid profile from an athletic testing standpoint. Didn't do any of the shuttles, but did do the jumps, and it was solid. It was above average 40 time for a guy who's just shy of 260 pounds. So athletically, it was solid, but not overwhelming. But when you look at the production, especially the last 2 years, there's a lot to get excited about with this player, with what he did in the ACC. He started 25 games over the last 2 seasons for the Hokies. In those 25 games, 34 TFLs, 25.5 sacks. So over a sack a game, 34 TFLs and 25 starts. This is a guy that was living in the backfield, was very, very productive. And he's just got a feel for winning at the top of the rush. Honestly, we talked about, their rumored interest in Mike Green, the pass rusher from Marshall, potential 1st-round pick. He ended up falling to the early stages of the 2nd round. Honestly, he is like the Diet Coke version of Mike Green. I think when you're looking at the body type, the play personality, the skill set, the production. There's a lot there. Obviously, he doesn't have any of the off field questions that Mike Green had. He's not quite the run defender that Mike Green was. I think Mike Green was a little bit more violent, a little bit more stout, and consistent at the point of attack in that way. I think Ryland can get moved around a little bit, but it's not for a lack of want to. He's just got to just get a little bit better from a technique standpoint and afford to get a little bit stronger in that area. But I think if you're looking at him, especially purely as a pass rusher and like body type wise, very, very similar to Mike Green, and the profile speaks that way. You got him in the 6th round. I think this is a fair bet to make at this point in the draft.
Yeah, and it begs the question, the Diet Coke version, like you said there, and that's probably a better reference to than the poor man's version or the homeless man's version, like you hear sometimes. But typically, you would see like a 2-round spread or a 3-round spread there, not a 5 or 6th round spread.
Yep.
Why do you think he's sitting on the board in round 6?
Yeah, I think it was a deep class. I couldn't tell you exactly why he felt it was a deeper class at edge rusher. Maybe it was the short arms kind of scared people off. Like I said, the run game wasn't always great, but stuff like this happens, man. It's like when Moro Ojomo was the team's 7th round pick a few years ago. It's like, how is a guy with this profile still here on the board, right? And it's sometimes you can't necessarily explain it. A player slips through the cracks here, or slips through the cracks there. They want to take a developmental player here in this spot, but they go with the offensive lineman over the defensive lineman. Or hey, this is a team that wants to draft an edge rusher, but they want guys with length, or they want guys that that tested out of the gym. And so I think when you look at, there was enough there that caused them to fall. But I think the production profile is definitely something that would be attractive for a team drafting at that point in the draft.
I'm curious too. We're going a bit off script here, but it ties into these last 3 questions. Is that Howie's job is to combine these different, I don't want to say different constituencies because that makes it sound as if they're siloed, but I've spoken to Howie about this, that he needs to filter all the information, right? So he's getting the feedback from the coaching staff, he's getting the feedback from the scouting staff, he's getting the data, the analysis from the quote unquote analytics staff here, right? So in Howie's role, or in any GM's role, how do you weigh these different constituencies when you're on the clock or setting your board?
Yeah, it's a good question, and I would these are the kinds of things where like owners meetings, where he can expand for a long time and just really kind of just go off. I would love to hear an answer to this question, from Howie, because number one, and I've never been in these rooms during these conversations, but from what I understand, talking with people, this is one of his superpowers, is his ability to kind of say all right, maybe not everybody's going to be on the right page, but being able to keep everybody happy, keep all invested partners happy, where coaches, analytics, scouting staff, think about it it's not just scouting staff, it's area scouts, it's your scouting directors. You have all the executives that you have at the top of that list, at the top of the food chain there as well. So just being able to let everybody feel that their voice is heard. Still make sure, hey, you know what? Maybe we couldn't get this guy for you, but I got this guy instead. Just allowing everybody to kind of share a piece of the pie. That's hard. It's the same way as what Nick Sirianni and Kevin Patullo and Aaron Moorhead have to do when you're splitting up pass targets between A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith. Everybody wants to feel valued. And so I would say the big thing is just allowing those guys, everybody in that room, to be able to voice their opinion in the lead up, and then just make sure that even if things don't go, for a person's way, that you follow up with them and are able to kind of give them some support and show hey, this is why we went this direction over that direction. As long as there's clarity and everybody's on the same page that way, feelings shouldn't be too hurt.
Yeah, that's a good answer. The one thing I'll say is that I don't think in any situation, I don't think everyone's ever on the same page, right? Because these are human dynamics here. This is not a fantasy football auction when you're just drafting from the rankings, right? I mean, this people spend months, years, this is their livelihoods, and a good scout's passionate about it, and a coach is passionate about it, and someone who's working with the data is passionate about this. And so you're absolutely right. This is something that Howie does well, is that he does draw from these different groups, because frankly, they all present value, right? And like I always I'm dismissive of anyone who's like dismissive of the data side, or anyone who's dismissive of the scouting side, because what you're doing is, all it is just accumulating different information to try to make the most informed decision. And if you belittle or devalue any one piece of information, then really it's going to hurt your overall process. And so yeah, you're absolutely right. When I talk to people about Howie and they ask me, like, based on being around him for 13, 14 years, what jumps out to me, I say that same thing, is that he's able to draw from these different constituencies to make a decision. So that was a fun conversation. After that, we will look at the day 3 players that are most likely to earn a second contract. Day 3 player most likely to make the team. Also, something that people brought up in the chat that's on our list. Who's going to be the camp crush? Who's going to be the training camp preseason standout? Keep tuning in to find out that answer. I'm excited to tell everybody about PHLY. You heard me mention it before. If you're looking for a celebratory drink, you're looking for, you just had X months of draft coverage, Fran Duffy's best in class draft coverage, and you want to enjoy a celebratory drink, but you don't want something that's just sitting on you. You want something that's crisp and refreshing. But look, you're on camera in 5 different markets, all times a day. You want to make sure you keep looking good. It's only 96 calories, 3.5 carbs. You know what I'm talking about? I'm talking about PHLY. Okay, PHLY is the place to turn. We're happy to partner with them. They use high quality ingredients, so you can get that high quality beer at a smart, approachable price. It retains the fun and independent spirit of Pabst, but it's that Pabst is known for. But it's light, right? So it's the best of both worlds there. Learn more about the new PHLY at PabstLight.com. Please drink responsibly. Must be 21 or older.
Well, now hear from our friends over at Rocket Money, because we know for a multitude of reasons, unfortunately, some more important than others, prices are going up on just about everything lately. So being smart with your money, it's not just a good idea, it's essential. And managing subscriptions, tracking spending, cutting costs, that can feel overwhelming. It can feel very stressful. Some people just want to put their head in the sand and ignore it. I probably fall into the latter of that, just like by nature. But lucky for you and lucky for me, Rocket Money takes the guesswork out of all of it, so you can easily make smart, informed decisions with your money and making sure that it's going where you need it to go. Rocket Money is a personal finance app that helps you find and cancel all of your unwanted subscriptions. It monitors your spending and it helps you lower your bills so that you can grow your savings. That dashboard that they've got at Rocket Money, it gives you a clear view of your expenses across all of your accounts, and you can easily create a personalized budget with custom categories to help you keep your spending on track. You can see your monthly spending trends in each category and know exactly where all of your money is going. You can get alerts. You can set up goals. You can pay off, figure out how you're going to pay off your bills and how you want to allocate your money. All of that is taken care of within that Rocket Money dashboard. They've got over 5 million users, and they've saved a total of $500 million in canceled subscriptions, saving members up to $740 a year when they use all the app's premium features. Cancel your unwanted subscriptions, reach out your financial goals faster with Rocket Money. You can download the Rocket Money app and enter our show name, PHLY Philadelphia Eagles Podcast, in the survey so that you know that we sent you. Don't wait. Download the Rocket Money app today and tell them you heard about them from our show.
So before we roll on with the superlatives, let's get to the super chats. Appreciate everyone contributing here. First from Polar Jam. Polar Jam, spent all my money on mouse traps. Fran Duffy was so excited to see the mice that he went in to the studio today. Someone asked that Fran didn't get the work from home memo. I got to say, the work from home memo came from Fran, I thought, right? I mean, I was I was ready to come to the studio today. I texted Fran because by the way, we've gotten 44 minutes. I should say this. We miss Bo right now. We're excited for Bo to rejoin us when the time's right. But Fran, I said Tuesday, Thursday. I know you're, if you want to go remote, that's cool. He said, yeah, remote. So I thought that's what we were doing. But so
I
Fran,
said remote. I said remote Thursday. I figured that we were definitely in today. And then when I saw the beginning part of your text in the group text, and it was like, oh, like remote today and tomorrow, meaning like Monday and Tuesday. And I just completely missed the boat on that. So I drove in, I get here, and I'm like, Julia's not here yet. Zach's usually here. He's not here. I'm like, oh, this is going to be a problem. So thankfully, Brenna was here as my life preserver to set me up, so we were good to do this remotely, since I don't have my microphone or anything with me from home.
Well, you know what Fran's truly doing is getting prepared for next Tuesday in studio, and you can join us too, because we are doing. This is going to be awesome. We're near sold out capacity for. There you go. Oh, Joy is incredible.
Best producer in the city.
Session, live from the PHLY studio. The one on March 25th. I missed that on unfortunately. I'm eager for the May 6th one. 5:30 to 8 p.m. Fran's going to break down film of the Eagles draft picks live from the PHLY studio. You can see where the mouse traps are, the mice traps are. So make sure you check that out. It's a diehard only event. There's only a few tickets remaining, and it's also going to a good cause as well, a cause that's dear to Fran's heart.
Yeah, the Huntington's Disease Society of America. So appreciate everybody that has contributed. I know when we did the free agency one, people donated super chats like specifically to go to HD. So I'll definitely appreciate that. But it's gonna be a lot of fun. Next Tuesday night. I think there's like 3 or 4 tickets left. So we like expanded it to allow for more people. So take advantage while you can. Jump in, try and see if you can get one of those last remaining tickets, and join us. We're gonna be right over there. That way, and we're going to be breaking down film of all 10 draft picks. I guess we'll try and figure out how we're going to allocate time to try and get through all 10, but it definitely should be fun.
Hang with Julia, Fran, Mickey, and Minnie. Who do you, so this is from Mikey Phased, who do you predict will have more career passing yards for the Cleveland Browns, Shedeur or Johnny Manziel? Johnny Manziel was 1,675.
I would think that they are motivated, Cleveland, to get the rookies, whichever rookie stands out, get the rookie into the lineup fast this year to see if they've got anything, right? Like to see if there's anything there before they go into next offseason where they're armed with the extra first round pick. So my guess is that they're going to have the chance, and that being Dylan Gabriel and Shedeur Sanders, to try and see the field this year. That said, I mean, 5th round pick, I would have to take the under. Like I would have to think that it would be that Manziel has the inside track to have the over there.
Yeah, I like Shedeur Sanders more than Dylan Gabriel. So if they do in fact go with the rookies this year, then I would go with Shedeur Sanders. I'm fascinated to see what happens with that job between Flacco, Pickett, Shedeur Sanders, Dylan Gabriel. It's going to be a fun one to monitor. Let's roll on with the superlatives here. The day 3 player most likely to earn a second contract with the Eagles.
Yeah, this was a good one. To me, where I kind of landed here was Ty Robinson, and it's low hanging fruit just because he was the earliest of the day 3 selections, but and he's a little bit older. So all right, by the time that contract ended, he'll be 28, 29. So I think when you're looking at it, I just feel like since he's got the highest floor, a guy that's going to play right away. He felt the most certain to me that he would get a second contract with the team.
Yeah, I hear you there. 28 though, it's a little older to sign someone to a second contract. Even McWilliams. I was thinking of him here. I was considering going with Mondon. It's atypical for the Eagles to pay someone for a second contract. If I had to bet, I would bet on one of the offensive linemen. Either Miles Hinton or Cameron Williams. I just didn't know which one to go with here.
And that's why I couldn't pick it, because I'm like, all right, like I don't know which one. Both of them are risky bets, and so it's possible that both hit. It's possible that neither hit. So that's why I couldn't land on one of those two.
And so that brings us to the next one here, which is the day 3 player least likely to make the team. It would surprise me if the Eagles kept all 10 rookies on the 53-man roster, especially when they have a history of taking practice squad or undrafted players. They already have a deep roster as it is, and the other thing too is they haven't been afraid to cut 6th round picks, and this is not a class where it's deeper on guys on day 1, day 2. This is a day 3 class with 4 6th round picks. So who's least likely to make the 53-man roster?
Yeah, to me, the guys that felt safe was like everybody up through Smile Munden, right?
Mhm.
Like I felt like, all right, Munden and everybody that was drafted before him felt safe for the 53, quote unquote. So then I get to the remaining few guys, and it's all right, who's competing? You mentioned both tackles. It's possible that Hinton or Williams plays their way onto the 53. It's possible that one of the two or both of them fall flat on their face and just don't look like they're ready for the NFL yet and don't make it through the 53-man cut down at the end of August, early September. The other player would be Kyle McCord, because you have Dorian Thompson-Robinson as the other third quarterback right now. Those two are going to be vying for that role. Are they? It's not a guarantee that McCord's going to come in and win that job. And so I think at the end of the day, I landed on one of those three. If I had to pick like least likely, maybe Hinton, but I don't feel great about that.
Yeah, this is one of those tackles is not going to make the team. I would imagine, and we saw that last year, by the way. Trevor Creek with both Keegan and Dylan McMahon, one didn't make the team, right?
Sure.
And so it's easy to project roles right now. I think Hinton and Williams could be competing for one spot. Now Hinton, the athletic profile, the size that jumps out. He is older. Now that's not as much a concern on the offensive line. I'm curious to see that. Someone here in the chat, Mike Y, thanks for watching, says Drew Kendall. I think Drew Kendall's gonna be their backup center this year. I could be wrong, but he was a top 5 center in this draft class. It wasn't an especially deep draft class at center.
No.
But I think Drew Kendall is I think he's going to be on the 53. Is that how you look at this situation?
Yeah, I think that, we know that they've got other options there. Clearly they moved on from Dylan McMahon last year, so they're comfortable, with what that picture would look like without a true backup center. But Kendall's just it's a different profile where, McMahon, it was more about like his athleticism and what the upside could be. And then with Kendall, I think you kind of know what you're getting here. I don't think there's a lot of mystery to what he's going to bring. So, this is an experienced, veteran college center that, it's got NFL bloodlines. The athletic upside isn't like stupendous. It's fine. I think you kind of know what you're getting here with Drew Kendall.
So let's go to the next one here, which is the player bound to be a training camp / preseason standout. And this could either be a camp crush or a fan crush. So Bo Wolf's camp crush, which is a much more nuanced football guy criteria than the fan standout, the fan camp crush.
And far be it from me to try and predict who Bo's camp crush is going to be. Although I feel like I did a pretty good job of predicting that last year. Basically, he said, I remember standing on the sidelines at Novacare Complex, watching practice early on in training camp and saying, I already wrote 3 names down for who I think your crush is going to be, and I'm pretty sure there was his three top names. So I feel good at my ability to do that. I'm not going to do it publicly because I know if I pick somebody publicly, he's going to say that he's going to hate that player by the time we get to camp. So all that said, I would say a fan favorite, it's probably going to be McWilliams. I think when you look at his play personality, the way that he's going to perform, like this is a hyper competitive, really feisty corner. I think that he's got a good shot to be working with the second team, as we get into the summer, just especially with that versatility. He could play he could play inside or in the slot. So he's going to back up Cooper DeJean, probably, right? I'm interested to see what that looks like from a rotation standpoint by the time we get into the summer. But with the way that he plays, where I would imagine, if he looks anything in one-on-ones this summer, the way that he looked at the Senior Bowl in one-on-ones, that was something. Some guys just have a knack for being doing one-on-ones, and some guys don't. He was really, really good in one-on-ones down in Mobile. So if that carries over, as he projects into the league, I think that will play well for fans and certainly for media as we're tracking the performance in these one-on-one drills every day during the dog days of summer.
Yeah, I've been deferring to you in any interview I've done since the draft on McWilliams, because I readily admit I did not do work on McWilliams other than read the profiles on him, right? So I'm trusting your judgment here. The profile doesn't jump out to me in terms of he wasn't a decorated college player. He wasn't first team all conference like multiple years, anything like that. UAB, he didn't really distinguish himself there. Kind of jumped on the scene more at UCF. doesn't have long arms, so you're thinking more of a slot guy. I know Al Calby said some people view him on the outside, some people view him on the inside.
Yep.
You're not really looking at sub 30-inch arms on the outside, as if you're so yes, you're probably looking at a backup slot. But I'm taking your word on Mac McWilliams. I think Smile Mondin or Kyle McCord here. I can see Kyle McCord, having like an impressive second or third preseason game and just passing the ball better than Thompson Robinson, and fans getting excited about that. Now, I don't know if it's like as pure, let's say, as Tanner McKee, but Kyle McCord, he'll be aggressive with the ball, right? Like it's not just going to be like check downs, which there have been quarterbacks in the past who it's like, is this guy ever going to take a shot downfield, right? That won't be Kyle McCord. Kyle McCord will be aggressive with the ball. And the thing I keep saying about Kyle McCord is I was on the phone the other night with a player from the Eagles past who, we were going over a few things.
Flex.
And, and this person was like really talking up Jalen Hurts, being like, you guys, meaning the media, don't make a big enough deal about like the fact that he always wins. And, I think that is kind of like the narrative on Jalen, but it is something that players notice, that like this guy always wins. And the thing about Kyle McCord is he had 26 starts in college. He won 22 of those games. And you can say, all right, well, he played with a loaded Ohio State team. Syracuse wasn't good before he got there. Now, it wasn't just him. Fran Brown did an outstanding job, but he was a program changer there. When he was in high school, he was a program changer. Or not program changer. St. Joe's Prep's always good, but he was like that team won with him. And so there's something to be said about a guy who wins everywhere he goes. And Kyle McCord has had that effect. So it wouldn't surprise me if he has a good summer for the Eagles.
I would like it if everyone that's watching in the chat, we've got hundreds of people watching right now on a Tuesday afternoon after we were live for like 18 hours this weekend, more than that, 20 hours this weekend. Leave your guesses in the chat as to which former Eagle Zach was talking to the other night about the Eagles draft class.
Yeah, I'm not going to say who it was, but I'm going to say you're not going to get the correct answer.
Wow, no faith in the chat to come up with his name. That's more of a reason for everybody to just churn through. Leave your comments, not even in the chat. Leave it below the video after the video is posted.
Here you go. The next one here. The pick that most frustrated a team 1 to 3 picks after the Eagles. So someone who, when the Eagles pick this guy in a different draft room, they're not pounding the table with excitement. They're thrown. They're saying, "Damn, Howie got it again!" Right? So who is that?
This was a tough one. Part of me thought about Jihaad Campbell because the Cleveland Browns selected linebacker Carson Schweschinger from UCLA with the 33rd pick, the first pick of the second round. I wondered because he would fit their profile, Jihaad Campbell. So part of me did wonder about that. I could see that being the case. They have not been afraid of medical red flags in the past either, Cleveland. But I did go to a day 3 pick, and this was tough because it's like, all right, let me find like, well, what would make sense here? Did this team address this position in the draft? I went with Mac McWilliams. The Eagles selected him 145th overall. The Rams picked 3 selections later at 148. They picked nose tackle Ty Hamilton from Ohio State. Now they did have a need at defensive tackle, but they also have a need at corner, and he kind of fits their profile of the undersized, versatile, scrappy. Line him up in off coverage and let him read stuff out. McWilliams was a player that I kind of pegged during the process as being a good fit for that defense out in LA. So that was one where I'm like, all right, if I'm looking at the pick and where he went, that I could see the Rams saying like, we would have loved to have Mac McWilliams in that spot.
Well, if the Rams were interested in him, then the Jaguars probably were interested in him too, because James Gladstone and Les Snead are like kindred spirits, apparently. James Gladstone predicted that Terrence Ferguson pick, according to Michael Silver's article today. Great article on The Athletic. You should check that out. Inside the Draft Room. Always like the Inside the Draft Room pieces. But yeah, I was surprised by Terrence Ferguson in the second round, not James Gladstone. So if the Rams are interested in him, then I imagine the Jags were as well. Those were good answers. And if you want to know the answer to the next question here, which is the player the Eagles missed from 1 to 3 picks before them, then make sure you tune in. And the reason I am being slow here is because we're getting within 10 seconds. make sure you tune in to the overtime here on the PHLY Eagles show. Not as good at that as Bo is. Still working on my timing. I didn't want to be too early. Didn't want to be too late. But we appreciate all those who did watch on Fast. And I say that because my grandfather is now an ardent viewer on Fast. He has Xfinity cable. Not a big YouTube guy, but now that he knows that he can get it on Fast, he's watching it all the time there. So here in overtime, we timed this well because this is the last question from the superlatives, which is the player the Eagles missed from 1 to 3 picks before that in the draft room Howie was steaming about.
Yeah, this is a tough one. I mean, I think we got to go back to day 2, right? And we talked about this in the moment. You know, it's just how this was playing out. We talked about the Andrew Mukuba selection. You know, taking him at 64, and you don't know how this is going to play out, right? You just kind of have to look back, but just kind of reading the board, reading team needs. How is this going to play? You know, you take Mukuba at 64 and you waited on a position like, you know, say tight end or, you know, if you were going to go defensive line later or whatever that was. But you have Mukuba at 64. And instead of taking a player like Harold Fannin, a player from Bowling Green that we thought maybe they were interested in, maybe you trade down a little bit again and you try and pick up some extra assets there and you take a Fannin. And then you had Xavier Watts, the safety from Notre Dame, available in that spot with your original 3rd round pick at number 96 overall. If the Eagles knew that was going to play out that way, would they have swapped it? We obviously don't know the answer to that. But the other one that just kind of stands out to me, you know, was the trade down when they trade from 96 down to 101, and then they trade out again. And we thought it right away. I'm like, all right, does that mean that they always wanted to trade out of that spot, or was there someone that they had their eye on when they made that slight trade down, and then that person was scooped up ahead of it? The person that we kind of anticipated would be that player was William and Mary tackle Charles Grant, just because they had him in on a 30 visit. He went off the board 2 picks earlier to the Las Vegas Raiders. And then as soon as that happened, the Eagles trade out of the 3rd round altogether. So those are the only 2 situations that kind of came to mind. Was there anything that stuck out to your mind?
Yeah, so I spent a lot of time looking at the 2nd round. I'm curious if you think at 64, if Shemar Turner had fallen 2 spots, if he would have been the pick at 64. Just because that is, you know, that's the defensive line. He came in for the visit. And yeah, it was kind of the player I was targeting at that point. I'm fascinated when Bo gets back to hear what his shadow draft was for at 64, but I absolutely agree with what you just said. I wrote this on allphly.com yesterday in my 10 thoughts. If you have the benefit of hindsight and you know how the board's going to fall, I do think the Eagles would have taken Harold Fannin at 64, and then seen what the safety situation was going to be. I don't want to suggest that because of what a consensus board is, or what you or Dane might rank the safeties, that's how the safeties were going to go off. But the fact that someone like Xavier Watts was on the board at 96, the fact that Jonas Sanker went off the board at 93, like there wasn't that run on safeties after Mukuba. In fact, there wasn't. The only safety taken between Mukuba at 64 and Sanker at 93 was Kevin Winston Jr. And it wasn't like Mukuba was the clear like number 3. You know, this was in the eye of the beholder. Do you think there's any chance Mukuba falls to 96, number 1, or within that, like, you know, 85 to 96 range, that, all right, this is a guy the Eagles targeted. They got Fannin at 64. You have some 5th round picks at your disposal. You move up and you try to get Mukuba at like 85 or something like that.
Yeah, clearly they targeted, obviously, Andrew Mukuba, right? And so the question now becomes were they dead set on getting one of those? You know, we'll say if it's, you know, for them, maybe we're saying it's 5 or 6, but it's unlikely that it was 5 or 6 safeties for them. I would say like maybe it was 2 or 3 safeties that were in that cluster, right? Or was it, hey, you know what, like, we grade Mukuba ahead of those guys for certain, and it's Mukuba versus Fannin versus, you know, insert offensive tackle here, right? Whatever positions you want to kind of plug in there. And hey, there's only a couple of those guys left on the board in this tier. we don't have any trade offers that, put us in range to definitely get one of them. So we have to stay put, right? Or maybe it was just him and Fannin at that point, but the only trade offer they had was 10 picks away, and they didn't want to risk missing out on both. So, those are the things obviously we're not privy to. It does come down to their ultimate evaluation of the player, of Mukuba. Anytime that you jump out ahead and, when you have that kind of cluster and you say, all right, yeah, this is our guy, you have to feel convicted on it. And I think you kind of have the coaches buy in as well to feel convicted on it as well if you're going to pick a guy that early.
Yeah, it's a great point. And it's the reality of the draft, first draft analysis, is that like they're making decisions in real time. We're making analysis with all the information. I say like a little flex here. When you write a book about a season, all right, the biggest benefit you have is that you know how the story ends. So it's like you can connect all the dots after the fact. You can say, oh, all right, this makes sense that this happened in week 3. And now you can connect it to something that happened in the 3rd week of the postseason. So after the fact, you can say they should have done that. They should have done that. When you're on the clock at 64, you don't know when Fannin's going to go. You don't know if there's going to be this run on safety. So you're sticking to your board, but you're also making a projection on the valuation of the player. That's the great part of this. And just answer a question that I got a few times since last week, as far as like how I do my mock drafts. Like I'm able to be selective in that what I'll do is I'll simulate an entire mock draft. Like I won't do the ones where I pick on the clock. I will simulate the entire mock draft multiple times, and then I'll go plus or minus like 20 picks to see, all right, to kind of get a sense of what the range is. And then you can kind of put it together based on, all right, if they target this position, this round, this position, that round. So that's it's easy to do that after the fact. When you're in real time, you can't do that.
No, I think it's a valid point. I think when we're looking at it from the outside as well, there's so much information, and that's exactly what you were saying too. Where if you want to look at my rankings and Daniel Jeremiah's rankings and Dane Brugler's rankings and Mel Kiper's rankings, well, imagine that, but like exponential to that, right? Because you've got grades from area scouts, scouting directors, assistant coaches, the coordinators, the head coach, the GM, all the executives. So you have all these rankings for everybody in the organization that has gotten eyes on this player. So there's a lot of opinions. And as you mentioned, that's something that's Howie's been so good at over the course of his career, is just kind of juggling that, taking in everything, and just trying to find that happy medium to kind of thread the needle and find consensus.
Well said. And then just one last big picture thought from me here before we get to the final super chat and wrap up. And this is something that I've put thought into the last like 48 hours. And it's actually something I have like conviction on. I feel strongly about. And it differs from some of the analysis that I've seen, not necessarily from us, but like elsewhere after the draft. And it's that, the Eagles didn't address tight end, and that's a problem. All right. And you might think that I'm either pandering or in the bag. It's not even that. I think it's a great thing. I think it's a sign of good process that the Eagles didn't address tight end in this draft. And let me explain, because I think it's problematic when you're sitting there day 3 and you say like, we need this position. Let's just pick from this position. If the pool of players is not attractive to you, don't just pick it just to fill the depth chart there. Now, you can fault them more for, all right, they should have gone Fannin day 2, but I've heard this argument. They had all these day 3 picks and they didn't take a tight end, but you don't just take a position because you need it. And I've heard Howie say it, that if you address all your needs on draft weekend, it probably wasn't a good draft, because it means you probably forced picks. And so I think that's good process for the Eagles. It doesn't necessarily leave them in a great spot right now, especially pending a Goddard decision. But I wrote before the draft, I don't think the Eagles are hell bent on taking a tight end if the board doesn't fall their way. The board didn't fall their way, and so I think it's good process that you don't just force a position because it's a perceived need.
No, and I 1,000% agree with that. And it's funny too. And look, like Dallas is a great player. People have talked about, well, they could still move on from Dallas. I tend to think that we're probably heading more towards a solution than not. But I think at the end of the day, like even if they did decide that they're going to move on from Dallas Goedert, well, they don't have a suitable replacement. they did spend like half the regular season without Dallas Goedert last year, and the offense was still producing at a high level. Now, there are definitely drawbacks to that plan, that being the number one option going into the season. But to say like, oh, the offense is going to be able to operate, like I don't necessarily feel that strongly about it. It's less than ideal, but I do think they'd be able to get by. But as we sit here now on April 29th, I do feel like it feels like they're going to probably get to some kind of like Josh Sweat similar solution as they did last year with the defensive end.
Well, if that's going to happen, I think seeing what Trey McBride and George Kittle were able to do with the tight end market certainly Goddard more than it helps the Eagles. What would a PHLY Eagles show be if we didn't have a Chase Daniel Plainview contribution here? And Chase, he likes to be edgy. Which Eagles coach is most likely to have their kid hack into their laptop, steal a phone number, and do a prank call? Doug Nussmeier is in New Orleans, so he's not eligible. Chase, I appreciate the spirit of this question. Not that I don't want to make light of this because it's not like I feel bad this occurred. So I don't have a good answer for you on this, but yeah, I mean it's a tough spot because these phone numbers obviously teams have them and it's not meant to be used this way, but
you don't say.
yeah, I don't have a good answer for which Eagles coach is most like. I honestly, I suppose the answer is whichever coach has teenagers, because that's something that you're more apt to do when you're between 15 and 24 or I don't know, 24 is maybe a little old, 15 and 12 and 20, let's say. Then or 12 and 19, I don't know.
The 21-year-old son of Jeff Ulbrich should know better than to do something like this.
Yeah, exactly. But nonetheless, Chase Daniel Plainview, I appreciate the contribution, and I especially appreciate you guys watching every day. And if you want to watch tomorrow, unfortunately, Fran won't be on with us tomorrow. He'll be driving back from the studio. But we will have, it's going to be Rich Hoffman. Rich Hoffman's back in town. And Rich and I are either going to, Rich, if you're watching right now, and I'll text you. If you want to do studio, we'll do studio. Actually, Vince left that up to you. So on my schedule, I'm in studio tomorrow. But Vince said if you prefer remote, we'll do remote. But Rich Hoffman and I are tomorrow. We're breaking down the Eagles' offensive depth chart. Okay, so just to give you a map out of the week here, Fran and I are back together on Thursday, and we will be doing the Vince special, which is breaking down the undrafted free agents. Vince gave me a call the other day saying, I know, we ask a lot of you guys. The one thing I ask is that you do an undrafted show. And I'm like, Vince, I promise you that will happen. Undrafted show, undrafted article, whatever it is. But yeah, we will be breaking down the undrafted players on Thursday. Friday, Jamie Lynch and I are on StreamYard, or on our remote. And I need to see what the Eagles rookie minicamp schedule is, because there's a chance we might need to make some staffing adjustments there. But in any event, we will be doing the Eagles defensive depth chart. And I bring that up because we will have some news by then. The deadline for the Jordan Davis 5th-year extension is Thursday of this week. So by Friday's show, when we do the defensive depth chart, we'll know if Jordan Davis is on an expiring deal this year or if he has 2 years remaining on his deal. So that's why we're holding off on the defense until then.
What's your gut tell you?
My gut tells me they pick it up. They pick it up or they work out an extension. And the reason I say that is because I think the Eagles would much rather bet on, $12.5 million or thereabouts for a player who has traits, who has who they like and just needs to scratch the upside, than not exercising the option. And he has a big year. Then if he has a big year, he's a $20 million a year free agent next year, right? And I think they would rather bet on having the player on, I guess paying him a little more than missing out on the possibility of having him. But I do think, though, the best solution is work out a 3-year deal with him right now. 3 years, $30 million, 20 guaranteed, and you are paying him less than what that 5th-year option is, and he gets the security for the next, 2-3 years of the deal. That's what I would do. But Howie's not asking me my advice on this one.
Yeah, I think you're probably right on that. I'm interested to see. I'm sure we'll get news on that. Obviously, we're going to get it by Friday.
So we appreciate Fran coming in the studio today. And
me and the mice.
I've been saying it, Fran's the best in the business at this, and always, his draft season on 2025 is wrapping up the next few days, and then he'll quickly turn to 2026. We're fortunate that you can find all that coverage here at PHLY on allphly.com and throughout the All City Network. We appreciate everyone watching. Bo would tell you, as always, we love you. Thank you to Julia, by the way. And Bo would say, as always, we love you. I will say, we'll do better tomorrow. Thanks for watching.
We all silly like the mayor.